Hello, this is Kirill from forexboat.com and welcome back to the course on money management. Congratulations, you've reached the end of the fixed ratio money management section. And how was it? How did you find the tutorials? I really hope that they were crystal clear and that you have been able to follow along as I was explaining this method. It is quite a complicated method to understand, but when you do get your head around it, it's really simple in its core, and it's also pretty simple and straightforward to use, especially if you have the risks table at your hand. So that was the fixed ratio money management method, and today we're going to quickly tally up the tutorials and talk about the advantages and disadvantages of this method. Advantages. First advantage that comes to mind is exponential growth. So with this method, you are still getting very rapid growth of your account, and depending on what you set as a delta, it will either be faster or slower, but it's still much faster than the fixed lot or fixed contract money management method. And moreover, we'll compare the two, but that will happen in the next section, and it will actually be quite an exciting journey that we'll embark upon. Next, this method is much safer than the Larry Williams method. This is something we discussed in one of the previous tutorials, that with the Brian Jones method or fixed ratio method, you don't get that trap that you had with the Larry Williams method. And that is a major plus, especially if your system critically depends on the stop loss to take profit ratio. This is a safer method to use than the Larry Williams method. And finally, the table of risks removes any complexity. So as you might have noticed at the start, it was quite hard to follow what was going on because we had to wait until we get a delta, increase our balance, increase our lots, check our balance, then calculate the next step for our balance, and so on. Like, this iterative process can be a bit tedious at times, but if you have the table of risks handy and you just populate the top row and then you let the rest get calculated automatically, it's very easy to track your progress and move on to the next step when the time comes. And once again, you can download the table of risks that I've prepared. In that lecture on the table of risks, it's in the supplementary materials. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, I highly recommend that because it is quite handy. Disadvantages. This method is less profitable than the Larry Williams method, and we will also see that in the next section. So it's kind of a trade-off. Do you want something that's super profitable but very risky and has pitfalls like the Larry Williams method, or do you want something a bit more conservative, still very profitable, but more reliable at the same time? Next disadvantage is that the initial effective stop loss to take profit ratio can be high. So that's when you're starting out with the fixed ratio method. In every first trade of every step, the effective stop loss to take profit ratio is higher than throughout that same step. That's also something we talked about. As long as you are aware of it, you can kind of account for it, and it only happens at the start, and then as you move along with the fixed ratio method, this effect minimizes itself and you don't have to worry about it that much anymore. And finally, the third disadvantage, there's no single formula. You have to use a table. It's kind of a bit of a pain sometimes, especially if you're trading with algorithmic trading systems. I found that it's much easier to code or program the Larry Williams method because it's just one simple formula and you just type it into your code. Whereas if you're using the Ryan Jones method, you have to create a matrix, populate it, and things like that. So it can be a pain then, but I wouldn't say that it is that much of a major drawback. So in terms of disadvantages, I think that the Ryan Jones method, or as we call it, the fixed ratio money management method, actually has fewer disadvantages than the Larry Williams method, or, well, at least they're not as critical. So that's the end of this section. Let me know if you have any questions. But otherwise, I highly recommend this fixed ratio money management method, and the book that Ryan Jones wrote is also a good source of information. So if you want to learn a bit more about his thinking and how he came up with this method and things like that, then that's probably a good source. So that's it for this section. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and until then, happy trading.